What's up, everyone out there in YouTube land? It's me, Perry Lovewhistle, and I'm back on Acadian in Project Quarm. I have leveled up quite a bit since the last episode. You can see I'm at level 8. I am using my fancy level 8 spells. I'm actually working on grinding XP on Eli Brook, who is one of the higher level mobs in Tulia Forest. So I am close to having to go somewhere else to get my experience. He also plays a role in introducing young erudites to the lore of Otis, the war between the erudites and the heretics, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later. But first, I'm going to med up, respond to some comments from the previous video, and get ready to talk a little bit more about Tox and Otis and the lore of EverQuest while I work on the quest that I want to do today, which is going to have me doing a lot of traveling. So first of all, I got a comment that I forgot to put 5 points in agility. And when I first saw that comment, I actually thought it was a joke. I was like, why would a wizard put 5 points into agility? And then I looked it up, and it turns out agility goes into your base armor class. The higher your agility, the higher your armor class, before you even put on any armor. I did not know that the ground floor, so to speak, of that is 75. When you go below that, you actually take armor class penalties. So because my agility is only 70, my armor class is lower than it would be, significantly lower than it would be at 75. So those 5 points would have done a lot to keep me alive up until now. That's part of the reason why I'm taking so much damage and taking damage so regularly while face tanking. I did decide not to re-roll because I am almost level 8 and I don't have enough time really to start over and play catch-up. I also, for some reason, didn't even put those extra 5 points into stamina. My usual go-to rule in RPGs is put it in HP. When in doubt, put it in HP. But I instead put it into strength. I guess that extra 5 pounds of carry weight was important to me when I made this character, but I made it really quickly. I guess it is what it is. We'll see how this improperly built character survives the race to 50. And there is level 9, which means it is time to start our run back. Because I don't have enough mana to gate. But while I am running back, and I want to talk a little bit about all of the houses in Tulia, mainly because the way it's designed, the way they built this Newbie zone was that each of the pure caster classes that can start as an erudite has a little hut with some helpful items inside. The paladins don't have a hut, but they also don't need much up until level 9. So as you can see, this is the wizard hut. They sell the wizard research tome, as well as some in-game text items and some reagents. This one over here on the east wall with the Rain Sparkle Sisters is for the enchanters with their research books and their robes. And this one with Tran Lispin in it is for the magicians. There was even one for the necromancers at launch. In actual EverQuest and on Project 1999 at launch, this southern hut is where you can find your necromancer, guildmaster, and a couple of NPCs that are friendly to you, and spells and a couple of quests. After Payneal opens, it's just full of their abandoned pets. But I want to talk a little bit about the Wizard Hut. For some reason, when they were coding this game, they decided not to have the upgrade basic robes in the Wizard Hut. They're in the other one, the Junior and Senior Apprentice robes, which have 4 and 6 armor class, respectively, and add a tiny bit of mana. So it's not like a game changer, but I can still buy mine up in the palace, but it's just kind of frustrating that they're not here. Also, even though I'm still several levels away from using it, the research books only have 4 in this era, so they're not the amazing 10-slot bank items that they are in Project 1999. Maybe that will get upgraded in an era-appropriate time. Also, being level 8 means a couple things as far as my spells go. First of all, I've got my level 8 direct damage spell, Shock of Ice, which is great for grinding on Eli Brook because he only takes 3 of them. And I've got my level 8 shielding self buff, which is really important considering that I forgot that agility. But I also have Column of Frost, which is my first quad kiting spell. It is a 4-target AoE direct damage. I don't have any way of slowing down enemies, so it's not like I'm going to be able to quad kite really easily yet. But if I find somewhere where I can get a bunch of insects, because insects run slower, and I can potentially quad kite them just by strafe running, which, by the way, if you don't know, the way EverQuest is coded, if you hold the right-click button and your right or left arrow, you strafe, but strafing adds speed because they keep your forward speed the same. So without doing the vector math, it makes you run a little bit faster. It's an important trick to know when getting away from enemies if you didn't put your 5 points into agility and are getting wailed on by snakes in the forest. So before I go up the wizard tower and start working on the quest that I intend to do today, I actually want to run up the magician tower, the gate callers, and talk about some of the lore that starts with the Eli Brook. If you go all the way to the top of the Wizard Guild and talk to Marcus Javens, there's a text chain that sends you all around the Magician Tower talking to different NPCs, over the course of which you learn that they had a heretic prisoner as part of the war. The erudites, who all worship either Prexis or Coelios, or if you're a wizard, Solusec Ro, are at war with other erudites who are necromancers at the start of EverQuest and necromancers and shadow knights later, who worship Khazak Thul, and there is a war between them. So the magicians had apparently captured this Eli Brook character, and he had escaped, and he sends you on a quest to go and defeat him and bring back proof of his remains. When you turn in the bones, you get a tiny little bit of experience. Considering that I'm coming up here anyway, it's worthwhile. I did get a blue and a half for, I think it was 12, so not insignificant. But the faction you get from it is huge. And I don't know how important it's going to be in the future to have high faction with the Magicians Guild, but I do. I am already at ally, and I have turned in less than a stack of Eli Brook's bones. Plus, introduced me to the war between the erudites and the heretics of Payneal, which is important lore that is going to follow this server actually all the way to Plains of Power. It's a much bigger part of Shadows of Luklin, but it's not an insignificant part of Plains of Power. But the reason why we're actually here today is over in the Wizard's Tower to talk to Jasper Kinshed. This quest follows thematically after the Wizard's First Assignment quest, where I got most of my level 1 spells from. You come up and talk to Jasper. He actually does give another quest that I'll talk about later, but he asks you to collect components. Not very different from the previous one. You tell him, I will collect components, and he gives a 6-slot bag, which, by the way, I could have used to get a free 6-slot bag at level 1, but I kind of missed out on that. And he tells you to go to Everfrost and find ice goblins. Ice goblins, which are level 1 through 3, drop ice goblin necklaces. Once I have 6 of them, I can come back and I will get a fine wizard's weapon. I don't know if it's going to be finer than the cracked staff I've been using, but we'll see. So now it's time to go to Everfrost Peaks. And I know what you might be thinking. It's time for me to take that teleporter and head over to the docks. But that's actually not the case, because the devs at Project Quarm have put in the teleport fire pots, which were rumored to have existed before launch in EverQuest, specifically for evil characters to get around. But what they do is they make it so that you don't have to take the boats. So I've got a shortcut over to Kanos, which is the reason why I have been able to get some levels in Blackburrow and Kanos Hills. But if you're on Project Quarm and don't already know about this, the firepot I'm talking about is in the abandoned heretic hut. And it pops you out right into the Kanos aqueduct system, which is useful because there's a couple of things down here that can drop some really useful newbie items. For instance, I happened to go by on one of my early runs through, and the nesting rat was up. I didn't get it on video, but the nesting rat is a rare spawn that drops this golden locket. The 3 charisma makes it great for an enchanter, but the 2 AC makes it also pretty decent if you made a mistake with your agility building your character. I also always exit through the exit next to the Casters Guild, because there is a chance of a rare gelatinous cube named Cubert. Cubert has been camped pretty consistently, at least during peak hours, but if he is up, he has a chance to drop a quest item which could get me an intelligence earring. Very useful, not only early on, but well into the game. I foresee myself coming back and camping Cubert at some point, even when I am not going to be getting experience for it. But that puts me directly in Kanos without having ridden on any boats. So now it's just a hop, skip, and a jump up to Everfrost Peaks. And just on the other side of Blackburrow is Everfrost Peaks. Now, I was just recently here on Project 1999 with Engrosser. If you watched that video series, you know that I was trying to increase my faction. And one of the ways that I could do that was by collecting ice goblin beads. So I ran through the newbie ice goblin camps and just to see how often they drop, and it was actually a pretty decent drop rate, but I ended up going with the other quest instead. And I also am going to stick with these southern camps. That way I know I'm not stealing kills from newbies. Just stealing kills from these polar bears and wolves. And look, right off the bat, not only do I get a bag, but my first ice goblin beads. So we'll see how long it takes me to fill up this bag. Well, that's it. 6 ice goblin beads. I also managed to pick up a backpack. I actually got a couple more bags and sold them, and some rusty weapons. So I made out pretty decently as far as loot goes on this little adventure. So let's head back to Otis and turn this in. As soon as I med up a little bit. 2 fizzles and I am out of mana. Brings me back up to Jasper with my bag of ice necklaces, which I turn in and get the servant staff, which has a slightly worse ratio than the cracked staff, but it has that +5 mana, which isn't a whole lot. It gives me another casting of True North. It's the beginning of this wizard's quest to maximize mana. So he's got a long way to go, but +5 is the beginning of it. But between being able to sell off my cracked staff now and all of the loot that I picked up killing ice goblins, I now have enough money for another of my level 8 spells. And I'm going to choose the Eye of Zom. I had to buy it in the Magician's Tower because it's a summoning spell. It summons this eye. So I now control this eye. I can use this to run around and scout. You can see I can still make Acadian sit down. It can be used to pull, because even though it can't attack, it does con the same as me. So if I'm in an aggressive zone, then the eye will make things attack it, and then those things will come back and find me wherever I am. But that is about it as far as lore and quests go at level 9. So I've got to get back out and grind out some more levels on Eli Brook, because hopefully by my video next week, I'll have yet another new batch of spells, a new hunting spot, and a new quest to do. And maybe even a fancy new robe. Make sure to give me a shout out if you see me in game. But until next time, bye!